What it do, Dream Team? It's your boy D Neal back with another reaction video, guys. Here we are with the truth behind African versus African Americans. College students talk differences and similarities. I'm intrigued to hear this. I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation. And before we dive into it, dive into that subscribe button, ring notification bell. Get a video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. Social media, Patreon, all up top. You can subscribe to any of it. Put all the links in the description. All you got to do is hit the link. Follow me. Talk to me. Human. I talk back. You guys got a favorite video suggestion? You can subscribe to Patreon and drop it in the comment section. What we got?
We definitely got made fun of about like our background and everything. As Africans got older, they kind of like held that inside, and then like when all of a sudden it became like cool to be African, like you'd see people wearing like the dashiki and wearing like cloth and all of that stuff, like, and I guess to Africans it was just kind of like a slap in the face.
Disconnect of Africans and African Americans. I like her hoodie. You Matter University. I really rock with that. I might have to grab one of these.
All right, welcome to the episode of the Lemon Squeeze. How are y'all feeling? Y'all feeling good on this beautiful Sunday night or morning or afternoon? But in this episode, we will be discussing the disconnect between African Americans and African culture. But before that, I will go around and introduce yourselves. So just say your name and what you identify racially. So we'll start with Toggle. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Toggle Shamet and I'm an African American.
My name is Marielle. I identify as both African and African American.
My name is Ya. I identify as Ghanaian and Black.
My name is Rama. I identify as Sierra Leonean.
My name is Josh. I identify as Nigerian American.
Wait a minute. You said race?
Yeah.
African American.
My name is Armand. I identify as Black American.
I'm Kanade and I identify as African American.
And I'm Oscar and I identify as African American.
All right, so this is a very much needed conversation, in my opinion. Honestly, I didn't notice the disconnect between African Americans and Africans before VCU. I think when I first noticed it, I think was when Black Panther came out, and like social media was like going crazy over the appropriation and all kinds of stuff. And it was, I really saw like the divide between African Americans and Africans. So I think that's when
Even in the movie Black Panther, you saw the divide between African American and African. No, that's it. Well, keep it going. My bad.
Between African Americans and Africans. So I think that's when I noticed it. And since then, I've saw like little things that it was like, wow, like we're very much the same, but culturally and socially, all kinds of things, we're very much different as well. Is there truly a difference between African Americans and Africans? Whoever wants to start off, start off.
I think culture, there has to be like culture-wise, because you're raised in different cultures, you're raised in different environments. So there is a difference in your behavior, how you act, certain things. There's just going to be a difference because of how if you're raised in different environments.
Difference between African Americans and Africans. Whoever wants to start off, start off.
I don't think there's really a difference in terms of like the people. It's just really more like how we carry ourselves. I feel like African people, just because of how we're like brought up, are more like reserved and more kind of like apprehensive with how we do stuff. But African American people are kind of more like go all the way out, and if I see it, I'm gonna do it. Or if it's something I think I can do, something I put my mind to, I can do it. Whereas African people are gonna kind of more like reserved or holding back a little bit.
Don't all speak
From my
at once.
perspective, I'll say no. I feel like the disconnect that is present is one that we created and constructed ourselves. Just like the idea of race in itself. We live uncomfortably when we don't have standards, when we don't have labels. When things aren't labeled, we tend to be very uncomfortable and we don't know how to react to each other. So I feel like, no, there is really no genuine difference between us. And if you disagree, like, please speak up. Personally, I just don't think there is.
I'm against what you're saying, not all the way, but there is a difference in terms, like you said, culturally and like you said, socially as well, because they're different. We experience different things or whatnot. Not to say that should create a divide, but it is a difference that we all have, that we own that about ourselves because we take pride in it. Doesn't mean we should separate because of it, but it is differences that we all have.
Yeah, I think we should celebrate the difference. I mean, we should still come together as one and celebrate our differences. That's just human beings are just like, you're not going to find two humans that are the exact same. But so, especially two people growing in two different cultures, you're going to have different, like you're going to have cultural differences. Does that mean you should divide? No. It is just a difference.
Doesn't mean we should separate because of it, but it is differences that we all have.
Agreed.
I would say it's more of like, I think there's a difference in how we're all brought up. So like African people, the way, just from like seeing my African American friends whose parents aren't from Africa, the way like my parents raised us and the way their parents raised them, it's like clearly different. So in terms of like personal values and values of like how you should treat like people in authority and like just people your age, there's like clear differences in what's expected.
I just think it's like really interesting how like all of us have used the word different instead of not the same. I feel like the word different is kind of one of the factors that has created this divide that we constructed. Is like that word different. It like creates opposition. It creates like that divide that we've created.
And in reference to like what Oscar said,
I respect what he said right there, because you different. When you say different, it is. But when you say not the same, it's almost the same as saying. I think, is that like not the definition of different? Not the same. I don't know, but I do understand exactly what he's saying when you say the word different. It's kind of like making someone an outcast. Like, oh, they're different. Like, it's like, you know what I'm saying? You're saying they're. It's like it is a little separation kind of thing right there. But I for lack of a better term, it's the term I use when I think of differences.
And it creates like that divide that we've created.
and in reference to like what Oscar said about like the word being used of different, I don't really think different means like it's bad that they're different. It's just clearly like there are things that aren't the same.
Yeah.
Basically. So like
Exactly.
different, ours is different from yours, but they still can both be fine. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Not to say like because they're different,
Exactly.
one has to be better than the other. It's just
Exactly.
two methods of doing something that are not the same, basically.
Anyone else? All right. Cool. So, why? Like, what are some reasons that African Americans and Africans have this divide?
I think that it all started with childhood. Because as a kid, I know personally I was made fun of for being African. Those typical comments like, do you live in a bush? Do you own an elephant? Like, stuff like that. So I feel like it stemmed from that and just ignorance from our parents as well.
Yeah.
Our parents say things to us in which, at least I can't speak for African Americans, but I know Africans, our parents say things to try to get us to stick with other Africans instead of branching out. And for that festered. So now it just lives on as we get older.
So I've kind of
And I think the ignorance in some of these questions, guys, like, do you own an elephant? Do you live in like that's literally pure ignorance, and that's just dumb. But I understand what she's saying. Like, they try to tell you get around more African, kind of get around more of your people instead of like branching out. And so it does create that divide because you're not looking to branch out and meet new people. You're trying to meet people that share, I guess, the same values, share the same beliefs, raised in the same environment as you.
Festered. So now it just lives on as we get older.
So I've kind of broken this down. So it started basically from childhood, at least for Africans. So we definitely like got made fun of about like our background and everything, like being told like you're not black enough and stuff like that. And so like as Africans got older, they kind of like held that inside, and then like when all of a sudden it became like cool to be African, like you'd see people like wearing like the dashiki and wearing like cloth and all of that stuff, like, and I guess to Africans like it was just kind of like a slap in the face, like, oh, like I was made fun of like this entire period of my life, and now all of a sudden like you want to take that and like use it, and I guess like that's why Africans like at our age like tend to be a little bit more exclusive with the culture, because they haven't necessarily dealt with their trauma yet and stuff like that, and so like they take it out on everyone else.
I can understand that.
That was the biggest one. I heard that all the time. Anyone else?
African booty scratcher. That's the one they heard all the time. But I can completely understand what she's saying. I like how she articulated that.
That was the biggest one. I heard that all the time. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Okay, so I agree with her in that aspect, but also another thing I feel like isn't talked about enough is the way our parents will talk about Black Americans. Because if we're being honest with ourselves, our parents are not respectful. They will say things to try to instill within us to divide away from them, but like being lazy or not as clean or stuff like that. And I feel like that also helps perpetuate the divide, which also needs to be acknowledged.
I think that aspect comes from the idea, like I was telling some people earlier, is our parents came here, most of our parents at least like that came from Africa or immigrants here. Like I know my parents immigrated from Sudan, I'm a first gen. And the biggest thing, at least talking to my dad, is like that concept of assimilation, which we don't talk about when we talk about Black Americans in general, whether they be African, Caribbean, or just born in the country, is you do have to assimilate into white America's stereotypes, regardless of whether or not you want to. And I think something that a lot of African people, especially our parents, did when they first came here was, you see on the TV that white Americans, you see they're portraying Black people as drug dealers, they're portraying them as criminals, as people that are dangerous, right? And our parents don't want to be portrayed as that, so therefore they're going to continue portraying Black Americans in that same way, because it's easier to say, okay, that's not me, I'm not a part of that little group, that's them, my people, my African people, you have these morals, we care about ourselves, like she was saying, you know, we're not lazy, we're not dirty, our parents stick around, all that stuff, which I think is a negative stereotype that we're placing onto Black Americans, and all we're doing is just pushing this white narrative through, and that's what the divide does, in my opinion, is it just pushes this white narrative through for white America.
I just never understood that.
Dang, that one was huge. I felt like she said was definitely huge, right? Because it's true, like on TV and in the media, and I'm not saying like it's always like Black people being portrayed as this, but a lot of times it is like black people being portrayed as like in shows and movies and stuff is like gangsters, or know what I'm saying, or you gotta be an athlete, you gotta be a rapper, or like it's basketball or rap, and like, know what I'm saying. And I feel like a lot of Black people are portrayed as that, and so their parents see that and they don't agree with it, and so they're like, that's not our people. Like I wish I could reword and try to say my and make sense of it, but she worded it so perfectly.
The divide does, in my opinion, is it just pushes this white narrative through for white America.
I just never understood that concept as a whole. Like we're different, we don't act like that. But when they see you and they pull you over, they don't care what country you're from. Like, they don't care.
Right.
So I just never understood that.
You can't see an African, like if me and you were walking on the street, I can't say like, oh, I'm African, she's Black. Nobody knows the difference. Yeah. Me and you might know the difference, but even our fellow like Black Americans don't even know the difference until you say it. Nobody knows that there's a difference, right? So like, what's the point of putting it in there?
And I think that media portrayal has a lot to do with like that bullying that happened when we were younger, because at least for me, I didn't really encounter for Africans until I came to VCU. So when I was younger, the only like portrayal of the African that we had was that thing that we saw in the media, like the kid being fed by some white folk, like and some like
facts. I'll let him finish his thought.
Like the kid being fed by some white folk, like and some like dirt, like real dirty shit, and like that's what as kids, that's what a lot of people had to go off of, and then once you encounter them as children, you do children stuff. And
make fun of them and do all that.
And also to touch on the like as we were getting older, like the feeling of because people are trying to like not take back the culture, but like understand African culture more. A lot of that is because like in America, like when we are younger, there's a certain age where people start to get more education about who they are and where they come from, and that's around this age because like not only were we like uneducated, but also miseducated. So we had to get older to really understand that. And that's around the time where we actually have to dive in. We actually wanted to dive into what African culture is all about. And a lot of that happened for me, at least, especially like once I got to VCU and I actually was around a lot of Africans. Was in college. But that's when I felt like it was like there was a lot of pushback for trying to do that. So me personally,
that is all, bro. He's literally spot on. He's so spot on. Yeah. I as a kid growing up, I wasn't really introduced to any Africans until I hit college. And then I did meet Africans. So like him, and the media portrayal, I said this in a different video, you only saw the commercial of like the kid where it's like feed this kid for 10 cents a day and he's starving and he's dirty and stuff. They never show like all the great things about Africa, but they never show the great things about a lot of countries here in the US, I've noticed. And so it's like, I feel like that's why a lot of people here like US is the greatest country to you know what I'm saying, to exist, is because we don't know what, a lot of us don't know what it's like in other countries because we only see what the media here portrays. And so until you get to that point where you start to see, like, educate yourself and like look for these things, and like whether it be like YouTube video, you can get a lot of education on YouTube videos, or libraries or anything, then you don't really understand. So what he's saying, I feel like, is just completely spot on.
There was a lot of pushback for trying to do that. So me personally, that's why I was.
Go ahead.
I think it comes from mutual respect. Like, you're not going to respect someone who doesn't respect you. Okay.
Facts.
So when you come from a totally different country and you come somewhere new where you don't know anybody, and the only people that you do know are people from your country, and you're trying to learn like the way of life here and how things go about, and then someone is disrespecting you, are you gonna respect them back? No. If it happens like one off, then okay, fine. Then you can say, okay, like this is just an individual thing. But if it has happened to you multiple times, that it's like, okay, now at this point, I'm just gonna assume that they're all like this. So I haven't really gotten the chance to understand and see how these people are. So, but from the few people or a couple people I've interacted, this is my conclusion. So I think that's kind of how it started. Like Tagwa said, with our parents. So when my parents came to this country, they weren't as young as Tagwa's parents. And then my parents travel often, so they know how to learn and adapt to different places. So like their assimilation is like quick. They know how to deal with it. But the other thing is, I never really separated myself to say, I'm Sierra Leonean, so I'm different than you are, or I'm better than you are. But growing up in school, I started to feel lower. Like who I was not worth anything. Because the way I was treated made me feel like you were better than I was, and I'm like dirt. Because that's exactly how I was treated. And that's what I was told. Like I said earlier, African booty scratcher, do you understand? Like, it was just so many levels of disrespect. And I understand what you mean. Like, as we grow up, then we become more mature and educated. Sure. But it comes to a certain point where it's like certain things that you know you shouldn't say or do to people. And it doesn't really have anything to do with education, but rather like who you are, like your morals, and you just don't say certain things to people. And I would say, like, even up until high school, this one girl told me, oh, you smell like an African. Okay. So how should I take that? And
these like black kids who do it?
Yes. Oh. So now I'm sitting here like, okay.
That's crazy. That's why, that's like wild disrespectful, bro. It does get to a certain age where it's like, all right, you're old enough to understand that you're trying to insult somebody. That, know what I'm saying? You're old enough to understand what that does to somebody. And so, of course, it's like, and now when they start learning, you already have so much resentment, I feel, built up towards them, that it's like you don't want anything to do with them, because like all the bullying or all of the name calling, all of the insults that they hurled your way, it's like, nah, like I don't want to understand you guys anymore, because like I took all this on, and so I understand where she's coming from.
And
were these like black kids who do it?
Yes. Oh. So now I'm sitting here like, okay, so there is a divide. And I don't think there should be a divide, but there is one, because we go from being disrespected to now everybody wants to be African, or everybody wants to know where they're from and claim it. There's nothing wrong with you finding out who you are or where you're from. But after you've disrespected me and now you want to come back and akikiki in my face and be like, we're one person, I'm not going to take it too kindly. And I'm not going to accept it just as easily. It's going to be a lot harder for me because I do harbor those feelings.
I definitely feel that. And to even add on to that, like, a lot of that's from like the African perspective, but for a lot of African Americans per se, especially that they grew up in areas where a lot of Africans were prevalent, that occurrence happened when a lot of us got to college. I've talked to a few friends, and it was like, so we didn't really have encounters with Africans, and then we got encounters, and then we started going out really trying to learn, and then that's when I started hearing and seeing people move really differently, especially specifically for me, since like a lot of people don't know my ethnicity off the bat. Like people believe I've heard people say I'm Mexican, Samoan, yeah, even East African. So I've literally been in rooms with Africans who believe I am African as well, who really talk shit about African Americans until they find out that I'm African American. Since I've come to college, I've heard African people tell me that African Americans don't have culture because we so inside. Even with, and I know it's a different, like, people have different, like, meanings behind it, but that Kata shit, nah, like, that's big dead. Because, like, I'm not having African niggas call me nigga. Like, that's how that shit feel when I hear it a lot of the time. I know that's not, like, exactly what it means, because I've had discussions with friends, but the way I be hearing it sometimes, it's derogatory. So that's when a lot of African Americans back off and be like, then it's that disrespect shit, and then it's like, y'all can hold that. Like, to the point where, like, I stopped trying to look into African culture. Like,
So I feel that it gets to the point where one side feels disrespected, like growing up, it seems like, but then that group sticks together and they start disrespecting the other group, and now other group feels disrespected, and it's hard to come together as one because both groups feel disrespected by each other. And so both groups are like, we don't rock with them. They don't rock with us. We don't rock with them. And that's how it's going to be. That's what it seems like. And so that's where that divide happens. And that's why it stays divided.
Like, to the point where, like, I stopped trying to look into African culture. Like, I just took a lot of pride in being African American. It caused, like, especially freshman year, caused, like, an identity crisis. And that was big dead. I didn't try to have that. So I just took a lot of pride in being African American.
Yeah. That's interesting.
See, I feel like I had that identity crisis too, because so I was born in the States, but I moved back to Sudan, spent a few years in Sudan, and then I came here, went to a predominantly.
I really think that episode was huge, and those college students are definitely so articulate, and all of them know how to explain their point very well. And so hearing that, you definitely learned about some reasons why there are that divide, and you can definitely understand both sides of it. And so shout out to them for coming together and having this conversation. That's all we got for this one. You guys got a favorite video suggestion, you can subscribe to Patreon or drop it in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel, ring notification bell, give the video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. Social media, Patreon, all up top. You don't subscribe to any of it, put all the links in the description. All you got to do is hit the link, follow me, talk to me. Love talking to you guys. You guys are the most incredible team on YouTube. It's your boy D Neal. Out.